Hello fantastic creatures, I'm Fantasims and welcome to my channel. Now, many of you who use Tool Mod know that you can rotate objects in really unique, funky ways to create all kinds of different object shapes and custom designs, but there are actually objects that normally cannot be rotated that if you do try to rotate them, it smushes them into a completely new shape, and I'm going to show you how this little trick can actually create some really cool architectural details for your builds. Now, usually objects such as this bridge, for example, can normally not be rotated, but there are a handful that can. So for example, Shift-Alt-Click to duplicate, rotate, and let's rotate this by let's just do 180 degrees so that we can mirror it upside down. And look at that, we've got our own kind of industrial, ancient looking underground sewage pipes. I don't know, you can create all kinds of stuff. Now that's normally what you can do with Tool Mod, but there are some objects that cannot be rotated, such as this bridge right here. I love this bridge. It's huge, and if I want to use it as like an arch for an architectural detail, I can size it down with the bracket key or with Tool Mod, but it's still very wide and it takes up a large amount of space, but I really want that arch shape. Well, guess what? Now I've put 10 of them side by side because I want to show you something. I'm going to leave this in its original size. If I pull up the tool menu and I click on this one and I rotate it, now I'm going to show you on this axis, because there is an axis when you try and rotate the unrotatable objects, nothing will happen other than it will rotate the footprint. So see, nothing has happened, but if I click on the object, it has a footprint. You can kind of see it right there, and you can see that that footprint is now tilted, which can be very handy when you're trying to remove the footprint and make it prevent the object from blocking your Sim's path. But that's stuff for another video. We're just going to focus on how to smush things in this video. So let's pull up the tool menu again, and we are just going to undo what we just did. And instead, we're going to rotate on a different axis. So for this particular one, it's going to be this axis, and we're going to rotate it by 10 degrees. And a slight change happened, not much because it was only 10 degrees. Now let's try it on this one, and we're going to rotate it by 20 degrees, 20, and it's smushed even more. Let's do this one 30. Okay, 30 degrees, smushed it even more. Okay, we're going to do 40, 40, okay, smushed it even more. And it does make it smaller as well, but you can always resize it with Tool Mod. Rotate, now we're on 50, so 50, and there we go. It's getting a lot more arched now. Rotate 60, 60, and there we go. I kind of like, 60 is like a sweet spot for me for most objects. I really like that arch shape right there. And then the next one is going to be, oops, and then the next one is going to be 70 degrees, 70, and then, ooh, it's very smushed. And then the next one, rotate, is going to be 80 degrees, and that is really smushed. Now, something to keep in mind is that you can go up to 89 degrees, but once you do 90 degrees or more, the actual object will disappear. So if we try to rotate this one by 90 degrees, disappears. Option undo. If we rotate it instead by 89 degrees, it is almost invisible. Look at it. Look at how skinny that is. Options undo. What about 85? 85 degrees, and you've got a really smushy arch. Now that might actually be quite useful because, for example, the reason why this can be so helpful, if we build a wall, let's put a floor down first, because we might just make something that I will want to save, and we use this little architectural detail like so. Now it's a bit too smushy for me, but let's say we use, I'm thinking this window from Strangerville, that could actually shape around it quite nicely. Now right now it's a bit big, so let's instead try the one we did at 80 degrees at the end right here. Let's try this one instead. Okay, that's still actually quite wide, so I'm thinking 75. So I'm going to just rotate it by -5 just to put it back 5 degrees to make it 75. Yeah, that's way better. Okay, so let's say I just wanted to create some architectural detail to put around a window or a door. Actually, let's do a door. I'm in the mood to do a door. So let's just use this generic wooden one here. From the base game, we're just going to lower this down. Actually, I want to lower it just a little bit more. Let's see. Normally the 9 or 0 keys in build mode will elevate it by 0.1 or lower it by 0.1. So instead, we're going to do half of that, and we are going to do -0.05 and see if that finesses it a little bit better. Kind of. I mean, this wood piece is poking through, but whatever. For the sake of this quick little tutorial, we're just going to leave it like that. Now, there are some other fun objects we can use. Now, a lot of times walls and posts cannot be rotated the same way the bridges cannot. And posts like this one, there's a base game and get together version that's similar to this one, and those ones are the same too. They cannot be rotated. So if I want a shorter version of this wall, all I have to do is click on it, rotate. Let's try 60 degrees, and look at that. You've got a shorter smushed version. It doesn't take up as much length. We can size it down if we want, and I could put that as part of a broken wall off to the side. That's looking pretty cool. Now let's say I want to create a decorative post. Here we have the debug version of the cottage living well. Well, if I rotate this by 60 degrees again, let's see how skinny it gets. Okay, let's do it a bit more. Let's do 20, so that's up to 80 degrees now. Ooh, look at that. That is skinny. And I want to duplicate it, so we've got 2 of them. We'll use the other one in a second. And then let's rotate this one to make it skinnier. We'll do 60 again. Okay, that's a bit too skinny, so let's do -10. Looking pretty good, but I'm going to size them down a bit. Let's say I want to put that detail like here, let's say, and I want to use these, but let's size them down a little bit. And I'm going to elevate it right there, size this one down. But see here, if I want it to be facing the other way, but if I use the comma or period keys like you normally would to change the size, look, it'll twist it to make it go back to its original, well, kind of its original size. It's a bit more of a stretched out version. So you can do 2 things. You can either place a floor, put it on the floor, and rotate the room, or you can rotate it with Tool Mod, but instead of just doing the normal rotation, click rotate around center. And we're going to change the axis so that it's that way, and we're just going to rotate it by 90 degrees, and it will rotate it without twisting it out of its smushed position, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Okay, and then I'm going to elevate it, and it creates like this little decorative effect. I think I want to pull it out by 1 though. Let's move them over. So it's pulled forward. I don't know what I'm doing, guys. This might end up looking super ugly, but I'm just playing around and having some fun. Now this one actually does rotate. One of the first things I do whenever I get a new pack is I try to rotate everything, because I love rotating stuff, so I like to know which objects can be rotated. That looks nice either side of the arch. This is also an object that cannot be rotated, but I'm wondering if we can do it in a way that it will create like a decorative piece on top of this. So let's see, if we rotate it, and make sure to unclick rotate around center, change axis, do the bog standard 60 to see where we get. Ooh, that's pretty good, but I think I want it skinnier. 20, let's see how skinny that gets. Ooh, that's too skinny. So -10. You can also do like -5 or whatever. I just like to do it in increments of 10 just as a starting position. And then if we shrink it, oh, that's kind of fun. I don't know that it really goes with this archway, but I do like it as like, I don't know, it could be the top piece on the top of a castle or a Gothic cathedral. That could make some really cool architectural details. And if you don't like the way this thing looks right here, you can always use a different kind of object to hide that. Like even a more smushed version of this might work, or this one if we size it down. That's as small as it gets without using Tool Mod. If we size it down to scale 0.15, let's see what happens. That's pretty cool. Elevate, let's just do 0.1. Okay, and then duplicate it, rotate around center, change the axis, and do 90 degrees. Oh, that might look nice. I don't know if it looks a bit boxy at the bottom, but that would at least tie in more of the stone look to it so it doesn't look wooden, and we could figure out something to put inside there. So like you could use a cylindrical object like this, size it down and elevate it up, put another one underneath, put another one underneath that one, although it does kind of hide this stone part, and I kind of like that part. It's a bit dark, but I mean that kind of works as like a stone architectural piece on like more of a Gothic cathedral maybe looking thing. Ooh, this might work really well for my Hogwarts build. I'm getting ideas, but not for this archway. Okay, so to tie in the wall, we can use one of these ruin pieces and make it a bit narrower. So Shift T, click on it, let's rotate it by 20. Oh, wrong axis. Options, undo, back, rotate, change axis. Oh, not rotate around center. Oh, that might have been the problem. Whoops. I forgot to unselect rotate around center. Let's try it again, see if we're on the wrong axis again. You know, a lot of this is just trial and error. Options, undo, back, rotate, change axis. So it's facing forward like that. Okay, now let's try 20 degrees. Let's skinny it up just a bit more. Rotate 20. That looks a lot better. Oh yeah, it fits nice and snug right there. I mean, it pokes through a little bit of the wall, so I need to pull it forward just a little bit more. But already that's looking really cool, like an old ancient ruin. Now some of you might be thinking, Kara, you silly goose. Why do you need to smush things? Well, first of all, it's fun. But second of all, for example, like when we got Discover University, when I saw the trailer, I thought we were getting these pieces as architectural details. I was so excited. I thought, oh, I can now do Hogwarts. I can now do Gothic castles and cathedrals. I thought we were getting these box windows. I thought we were getting these windows. I thought we were getting these doors. And I was very disappointed when we did not, and it's just set dressing. I don't know why they do. I mean, look at these windows. They're so cool. Why couldn't they just create these as actual windows? Like, even if we didn't get lots of swatch options. Anyway, I digress. But in order to create like decorative pieces for roofing, sometimes the pieces are just that we have in game are just too big. So for example, these 2 objects from Snowy Escape cannot be rotated, but if I click on them and I rotate them, let's do 40 degrees. Look at, they get skinnier, and let's rotate again by 20 degrees. Ooh. And then you can create like these skinny decorative pieces, kind of like here that you see in old castles and Gothic cathedrals that have that spire spike look to them. So smushing things and making them skinnier can be very handy. Like for example, you could take this from Cottage Living, and I love the roofing on it. I love that it's got some mossy detail on it. But let's say instead of just having it smaller, like you can make it smaller, but the part at the bottom is going to stick out. But But if we rotate it with tool mod, let's do like 40 degrees, see what happens. We can make a steep slope that blends in way better. Let's try another 10 degrees. And that way we can keep it a bit bigger, but create a really cool roofing design that flows into each other. So another roofing option that looks great when you smush it is the new cottage living toppers. Now, something that I really don't like about the roofing in Sims 4 is the round roofing really doesn't go very high. I mean, that's not too bad, but when you make a big one, look, it's like, ugh, that's boring. I don't want it that short. Now, you can use Arnie's Pro Build mod to elevate it, but what I noticed when I did my shell challenge, and that shell challenge is still available, guys, if you want to join in. I made these really tall roofing, but sometimes it makes the lots place backwards, so it doesn't have a very nice glitch to it. So we can't build very tall roofing, but you can take this, for example. Let's size it up, and I'm holding the shift key down, and then I'm going to rotate with the comma key, make it bigger, comma key, bigger, comma key, bigger. And if you want, shift T, click on all of them, and if I select all of these, and technically because these are all rotated by 45 degrees, if I duplicate and rotate these, because we're rotating on the regular axis that all objects can be rotated, we're going to do it by 22.5 just to fill in the gaps, and then you've got some pieces that fill in there. Now, it can be kind of hard to select all the other pieces, so you can either try to select them, which is kind of hard, or I should have put a floor underneath, because once I twist them, putting a floor underneath will delete all the pieces, but for the sake of this video, it doesn't matter, I can always make this again. What you can do is click on something else, get rid of the green. You can actually leave the roofing like that and create like a tribal hut, or you can shift click on the ground, shift click on another corner, and we've created a grouping box. Options, toggle group, it'll select everything much easier, and then we're going to rotate, and let's change the axis. I think it's that one, I don't know, let's test it out. Let's try 20. Yeah, and it smushes it, so we are going to rotate by another 40, and it's really smushed it. So then we can resize it by scaling it and do it by like 4, and then you can shift click, shift alt click to duplicate, elevate by, I don't know how high, let's try 4. Okay, and then we're going to scale these back to maybe 3, and you can make like a tiered shape roofing, but we're going to rotate even more. Let's try 20 degrees. That might be too much. Ooh, that's good for a top part, so let's elevate that by, let's say 2. Ooh, that's not bad actually. Rotate, let's do -2, see if it thickens it out a little more. Almost, guys, that's actually pretty accurate. Rotate, let's try -1 and see what happens. -1, and then we're going to elevate, and we're going to lower it by 1, see if we can blend it in nicely. Ooh, that's a bit much. Elevate 0.5. That's nice. Now, once it's all like this, it's really pretty much impossible to select all the pieces unless you toggle the group like I showed you before. But look, you've created your own really cool looking cone roof. So see, smushing objects can be super fun and useful. Or for example, maybe you want to create a little Japanese garden. Let's put one either side here. And let's say I want the bridge to be way more curved. Let's rotate. I think this might be the wrong axis. Let's try it. Nope, that's the right one. Rotate. Let's do 50 degrees, see what happens. Whoa, look at that. And that looks way more like the kind of Japanese garden bridges when they make those like mini Zen gardens or whatever. Let's see what happens when we rotate these. I just have so much fun rotating because you never know what's going to happen. Okay, let's rotate by, I did it by 20. Let's do another 40. And look, we've got skinnier versions of these. If you want it to still be tall but not as wide, smushing it can really help because I still have the height, but I've reduced the width. And I'm actually, let's rotate it by another 10. So I think this is at 70 now. That might be a bit much. Let's do -5. Perfect. And then we can move that to the end of our bridge. And look at that. We've got like a little baby bridge and a little baby arch. Same thing with this little underground tunnel bridge thing. Let's rotate it by 50. And look at that. It takes up way less space. So we can still keep an object big because just sizing it down, the entire thing is just going to obviously get smaller. But it's still, some objects are just really wide and you might want the arch shape to still be big enough but not as wide. Let's rotate it again by 20, see what happens. And look at that. You've still got a nice big arch, but it's taking up like half the space. Okay, and then there's something like this wooden shed. And let's say you wanted to create some layers for it. You could just size it down and elevate it up so that you have like another floor to it. But why just do that when you can smush it? So we're going to try rotating it by 40 degrees and it's made it skinnier. Now we can rescale it. Let's make it 2. Oops, that's too big. 1.5. Okay, let's rotate it a bit more. 20 degrees. And then look, you can come up with an even bigger. It kind of looks a bit weird. So let's lower it. -0.4. Actually, let's rotate this one to make it a bit skinnier. 20. And then rescale it to 1.2. Let's rotate it again. And then look, you've pretty much created the same thing, but it just looks bigger. You can get away with it being like they're similar sizes, but this one is just a lot taller because you smushed it. In order for this one to be this tall, you'd have to make this twice as wide. So it's a great way to add height to something without increasing the width. Same with this little dock right here. We could just resize it down, but then it makes it a lot smaller. If we want to keep a similar kind of size, but just skinny it up a bit, rotate, let's try 30 degrees. Okay, let's rotate a bit more, 20 degrees. It's a bit too much, -10. And there, we've kept the size, but we've just smushed it in a little bit. I'm pretty sure you get the point by now, but let's just real quick see what happens when you do it with some sci-fi objects as well. Okay, so these objects from Strangerville, they cannot be rotated, but let's say you want to make them skinnier. Like if I want this to feel more like a skinny antenna, let's rotate it by 60. And look at that, all of a sudden, we have this very skinny antenna, and we can resize it so that we can end up with a bigger one without it being wider. So for example, if I were to just resize this one, it takes up a lot more room, but you can come up with some variety. And if you wanted to, on like a sci-fi roof or something, have the same object just in all different skinny levels of skinniness. That's a terrible way to describe it, but whatever. Then it just gives you more variety. Let's try it on the pipes. Let's say I really want I still want the pipes to be big, but I just want them to be skinnier. Okay, I've selected them. Let's rotate by 40. And it's smushed them this way, so they're still bigger, but they don't take up as much length. Let's do it by 30. Ooh, look, now they're really smushed. Because we could just take them, and it's kind of like a size between the smallest and like 50%, but it also makes them sit lower. So if you still want the same height, but you just want it to be a bit shorter. Now, it does kind of smush the pipes so that they're an oval shape, and you might not like that. But the point is just that you can come up with all different kinds of unique shapes by smushing the objects that normally cannot be rotated. Okay, and then here, real quick, I'm going to show you how I smushed a bunch of objects to create some of my Hogwarts architectural detail. And don't worry, I actually have speed build footage of me creating this, so you can see step by step how I did it. But I just want to real quick show you, look at what you can come up with if you smush objects. Like I took the fence post from Cottage Living. This is what it normally looks like. And look at how you can smush it to create these really tall columns. And this is perfect because we don't have really nice architectural columns in the game. They're just very skinny. So for example, if you go into the column section, I think like this column is one of the biggest ones. There's probably some big square ones as well, but that's about as thick as they get. And you can elevate it. Well, this one doesn't elevate very high. Let's find one that can be elevated really high. Like even these new ones from the Morocco, what is it called? Courtyard Oasis. Like they're nice, but they're just very skinny. But if you want to create your own custom column, you can by smushing objects like this. And if you want this to be even bigger, you can just make it bigger. You can adjust the thickness to make it slightly thicker. Whatever you want, you can come up with some really cool stuff. Then over here, I just took like this bridge from Discovery University. That's what it normally looks like. I mean, I've sized it down. It's normally like this big or whatever. But you can customize it and do it in all different kind of degrees of skinniness to create whatever kind of arch shape you want. I did it with the stairs from Discovery University as well. You can make them skinnier and skinnier and then use this as an architectural detail. Like this could go the side of a roof slope. I did it with the Discovery University bridge as well. You can see the difference of when you really smush it versus here with all of these that I showed you earlier, but then also the addition of this one as well. And if you make it really skinny, you can use it as a really cool architectural detail like I did for the Hogwarts entrance. So this is an arch entrance that I created by smushing a ton of objects. And then for the Hogwarts roofing, I came up with this custom roofing because obviously you can only place roofs on top of rooms. So to create this custom roofing, I used these from the new Cottage Living, and I basically took it like this and rotated a bunch of them like that. Bring up tools, select all of them like so, and then rotate them. And I'm just going to do 40 to see what happens. 40. And look, you can do that, and then you can Shift-Alt-Click to duplicate it. Let's elevate it by 2. That might be too high. And then rotate it again. This time we're going to rotate it another 20 degrees, and that skinnies it up. Maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe actually let's resize it. Scale to 1.5. That's a bit too big. Scale 1.2. Okay, perfect. And then let's lower it by -1. Bit more. And then look, it blends into this base one. Then you Shift-Alt-Click again and elevate by, let's just do like 1. That might be too much. And then we're going to rotate it again by another 10 degrees, and that'll make it skinnier. And so on and so forth. And you just keep doing that until you reach like a tippy top slope and you've created your own custom roofing. So look how cool it is when you can just smush objects. You can come up with all kinds of different designs. Like these decorative rooftop posts, it's basically all of these objects right here. I just smushed them a little bit and assembled them all together to just create some architectural detail. And there you go. I hope you have fun smushing objects. Be sure to tag me so I can see how you smush objects into your own unique designs. And until next time, guys, I freaking love you.